kahumbi Francisco nengata kemika Loko hetwana na atiko trita kula Loko hetwana na atiko trita nyonshisa Loko hetwana na atiko trita
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet, Channel 628.
Winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And it is time for Africa World Hour. A very warm welcome to you. This is the Tuesday edition as we take you through the next hour on the latest news developments from the heart of Africa to all corners of the globe. One planet, countless stories. We bring you the faces, the voices and the perspectives that matter here on Africa World Hour. Welcome to it. I am Tshepiso Magwetla. Here's a look at your top stories this hour.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tshepiso Magwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And we start with work continuing in eastern Afghanistan to rescue thousands of people caught up in the devastating earthquake which struck Kunar province yesterday. The Taliban authorities say 800 people have been confirmed dead, though the casualty figure is likely to increase. Ibrahim Al-Modi is from the aid agency Islamic Relief Worldwide in Kabul.
So it is catastrophe, and one of the key challenges is the access. Some areas closed where entire villages collapsed. There are people whom they still under the rebels, children, females, elder people, and the rescue team still working. I cannot confirm, but I'm afraid even there are some areas where no one has reached to these areas yet, which is affected by this earthquake.
The African Editors Forum says due to the rise of disinformation and fake news as a result of artificial intelligence, journalists across the world must go the extra mile to fact-check stories before they publish them. This was heard during day 2 of the M20 summit, which kicked off yesterday in Melrose Arch, Johannesburg. The summit focuses on the role that media and journalism plays in fostering information integrity. President of the African Editors Forum, Emmanuel Dogbevi, has more.
I think one way I believe we can tackle it is for the media to continue to be consistently truthful, fact-check every information, ensure that you have established the fidelity of every fact before you publish it. I train journalists across the continent, and I always tell them, ensure that you have fact-checked your information before you go out there. Do not rush to publish the story. Don't be the first to publish, but be the one to publish the facts. I think that way, as we consistently ensure that the information out there has been verified, it's a factual information, it is truthful, the media will begin to win back the confidence of the public.
And we look at a rebel group in Sudan's liberation movement saying an entire village has been engulfed following massive landslide and its entire population of more than 1,000 feared dead. The rebel group that controls the area says days of heavy rain triggered the landslide on Sunday, which left just one survivor. The movement has appealed for humanitarian assistance from the United Nations and other regional and international organizations. Many residents from North Darfur state had sought refuge in the Mara Mountains region after war between between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces forced them from their homes. The BBC's David Bamford has more.
The Sudan Liberation Movement, which controls the Mara Mountains in the Darfur region, says the village of Tarsin was buried under mud and rocks following heavy rain on Sunday. The area where the landslide occurred remains largely inaccessible to the UN agencies and indeed to the protagonists in Sudan's long-running civil war because of the difficult terrain. The SLM has appealed to international aid organisations to help with rescue efforts, but it's unclear how they can even get to the location.
And Malawi's Electoral Commission says it is advancing in its preparations for the 16th of September, for the 2025 general elections, where citizens will elect a president, members of parliament, councillors of their choice. It says ballot papers have started coming to the country in several consignments after landing at Kamuzu International Airport in Lilongwe. Channel Africa's correspondent in Malawi, George Mango, has more.
So the first consignment did arrive yesterday around 3:30 p.m. Central African time, as opposed to the actual time of 11:30 a.m. in the morning hours. There was a delay, which the Electoral Commission justified to say it had to do with the refueling system in Nairobi, Kenya. But otherwise, the consignment was well received. It is to do with 108 constituencies. So the last consignment, according to the electoral body, is on September 6 at equally the same time of 11 a.m.
And finally, an armored train carrying the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has crossed the Chinese border on its way to Beijing. He is expected to join about 20 other world leaders at tomorrow's military parade there. The BBC's Jill Mackenzie reports.
This is the North Korean leader's first trip to China for 6 years and the first time he's ever attended an international gathering of world leaders. For the past few years, he's prioritised his relationship with Vladimir Putin, helping Mr. Putin fight the war in Ukraine. But it's China that's traditionally kept North Korea afloat, and this trip suggests Mr. Kim is ready to rekindle this relationship. Appearing on stage beside Mr. Xi, Putin and a host of other world leaders also allows Mr. Kim to show the West that he's in a much stronger position than he used to be.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet.
Channel 802.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine. Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
This September, Channel Africa celebrates Heritage Month, a time to honor the stories, the rhythms, and the languages that make us who we are. Whether you're in Lagos or the shores of Zanzibar, to the mountains of Lesotho or the markets of Dakar, we are united in diversity.
Najivunia kuwa Mwafrika.
Kupendolera Afrika ndiye nduwake.
Proudly African and fabulous.
Let us preserve our languages. Let's embrace our uniqueness. Let's embrace our cultures and celebrate the beauty of our continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tshepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And it's just about 10 minutes past 9. A very good evening to you. This is Africa World Hour. Just a reminder that you can reach out to us on WhatsApp +27634069126 if you want to share your point of view, your perspectives on some of the stories that we're covering. Now, let's tell you about Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has removed the West African nation's Chief Justice effective immediately. The president's decision was reportedly based on a report by a committee that found grounds of misbehavior. So we'll come back to that story later on. First, let's go to this. The Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation, in partnership with the Southern African Liaison Office, hosting a colloquium today, 2nd of September, on South Africa's readiness to assume the G20 presidency in 2025. The event brought together voices from different engagement groups, from labour and youth to women and business, to share their expectations and priorities. Our reporter Lebogang Mabanga has the story.
South Africa's upcoming G20 presidency is being framed as an opportunity to elevate the voices of developing countries while addressing pressing global challenges. For organised labour, it's a chance to push for equality and social justice. Matthew Parks, Parliamentary Coordinator for the Congress of South African Trade Unions, speaking on behalf of the Labour 20 or L20, says workers expect the summit to tackle inequality and job creation.
As organised labour, we view South Africa's hosting it this year as a chance really to push the Global South agenda, and specifically, to your earlier comments in the opening, about a platform to raise working class interests. Chair, I think also want to see how do you really nudge the G20 broadly into a platform which lifts Global South concerns and champions their interests, and not just simply to be dominated by the Global North, and to look at some of the specific themes, inequality, poverty, job creation, sustainable development, etc.
Parks added that having business, labour and civil society at the table alongside government is crucial for meaningful outcomes.
And again, Chair, we think it's quite useful that labour, civil society, business have been given space to really be almost in effect co-hosts with the government. I think, Chair, that speaks to South Africa's progressive political centre, the kind of the social compact discourse of South Africa, etc. And I think for our side as Labour, we try to see how to use the space to develop concrete outcomes, which can really lead to improved living conditions for working class communities across the world.
For young people, the G20 platform is seen as critical in shaping pathways to employment and climate action. Moeketsi Kwahela, co-chair of the Youth 20 or Y20, says the youth engagement tracks reflect issues young South Africans face daily.
Our work has been taking place through 5 thematic tracks or 5 thematic areas. The first one really has been on climate change and environmental sustainability. And, the second thematic area that, has been leading our work in terms of the negotiations that started earlier in March, it has been on inclusive economic growth and employment. Again, what are those pathways to prosperity that we need to consider for young people, given that we know, again, in our country, if you follow the news, Stats SA would regularly release the quarter labor surveys. And again, it's us as young people who are making the loudest noise in those surveys.
On the gender front, the Women 20 or W20 has already been active in building momentum. Professor Nania Bolamela, co-chair of W20 South Africa, despite limited resources, says their commitment remains strong.
We have made a lot of progress with very few resources, I must say. And I also need to emphasize that all of our delegates are volunteers, so they all have other work that they need to focus on. But I think that we're all very passionate about what we're doing and what we need to do for women, by women.
With South Africa set to take on the G20 presidency, the colloquium highlighted both the opportunities and the weight of expectations. Stakeholders say they are ready to use the platform to shape global priorities in favor of inclusive growth and social justice. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Annie Kalonji. sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons danser au son de Haya, que je dédicace à vous tous, chers auditeurs, qui êtes en train de suivre cette émission Mix Vibration. N'oubliez pas, vous pouvez nous suivre à partir de l'application SABC+. Vous choisissez Channel Africa pour suivre l'émission en direct. Nous allons danser au son de Haya.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Dar es Salaam siku ya leo ni ya kijani.
Ya kabisa, Tanzania nzima macho ni hapa, na mkutano wa leo umeshika karibu 90% ya vyombo vyote vya habari. Niko hapa kusubiri kusikia ni kitu gani hasa ambacho CCM itakisema katika siku ya kwanza ya grand opening ya uzinduzi wa kampeni zake kitaifa.
Rais wa Tanzania Samia Suluhu Hassan ameidhinishwa kuwania kiti cha urais katika uchaguzi utakaofanyika Oktoba 29 mwaka huu na tume ya uchaguzi. Hili unalizungumzia vipi?
Ila kwanza lilitarajiwa, ni jambo liko wazi kwa sababu Rais Samia ndiye aliyepata idhini ya kuteuliwa na Chama cha Mapinduzi kupeperusha bendera ya chama.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Africa World Hour, unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
16 minutes past 9. Senegal's President Bassirou Diomaye Faye says Africa could help feed the whole world if only the youth were to be placed at the heart of agricultural transformation. Faye was speaking during the opening session of the Africa Food Systems Forum meeting in the Senegalese capital of Dakar, where he added that the continent has all it needs to become self-sufficient in food production and could help the whole world. Echoing this call, Rwandan President Paul Kagame said Africa can't keep depending on the rest of the world when it actually has everything, when its people know what to do, when there is really nothing lacking. For a look at the feasibility of proposals, we're joined now by Chief Economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, Wandile Slobo. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's just first start with the introduction of agri-farming and the intersection with technology, innovation, etc. Just when did this become a necessary reality, and how far are we just from other Western countries? Because if we're saying that, these pilot projects are all great, but we need to be moving at scale that feeds many more people.
Yeah, I think the starting point here, just to frame it for the listeners, is that as the African continent, we remain a net importer on agricultural products and food products. We spend a year as a continent about $80 billion. That's including, of course, the Maghreb region, Egypt, and the others. But if you take those countries out and you look at the sub-Saharan Africa region, we're spending a year about $45 billion importing food into the continent. But then, while the story looks that way from a continental perspective, you could ask the question of saying, look, are all of the countries net importing, or are there glimpses of light in the continent? And there's certainly some differences in my own country, here in South Africa, whereby we are actually sitting on a net exporting side, where we export about half of what we produce. And instead of actually spending that much importing food, we gain about $14 billion selling food products out to the world as South Africa. There are certain key things that differentiate South Africa from the rest of the continent, and that is at the heart of your question about technology. Because South Africa is far advanced in a technological side than much of the African continent. By technology here, we are using the term in its totality, both on advancement of seed cultivars, genetics in animals, as well as the mechanical side of farming then, which is more important not only just for productivity, but for efficiencies, while the rest of the African continent pretty much still lags far. I'll give you a quick example to sum this point, which is that if you were to take the staple crop for the continent, which is maize, particularly Southern Africa. They take away South Africa and Zambia out of the equation and look at the average yield of the continent. It is less than 2 tons per hectare. But when you look at South Africa, the yield is over 6 tons per hectare. And the only difference is the seed cultivars as well as the technology that is being used here. That gives you then a sense of how far behind the rest of the continent from some of the countries that have advanced in the food and the agricultural production.
And with this advancement or advancements that we've seen, have we seen a better quality? And here I'm talking from a health perspective, because I remember from the onset when innovation was being tinkered with, there were concerns that were used about the type of crops that are being planted, and how a lot of that dumping was done here on the African continent. So we've seen an improvement in terms of quality, but you also spoke about how much further along South Africa is because of how far they are in terms of tech and innovation. But access to markets is a very important differentiator as well, because if we say that we want to move from being a net importer to a net exporter, that is a very important factor.
No, typically you must first have a product to sell before, from a continental perspective, before we're able to think about the exports. And I will go against the point that both the presidents have made, because there is this typical thing in Africa of outsourcing your problem to someone else, that we need to change things. We are sitting where we are because of ABC and try to explain ourselves out of the issues. On agriculture, I'll take an exception here, because this has nothing to do with outsiders, but it's the continental policy aspect, and it is a political aspect that Africa's agriculture is where it is. And saying if only young people were there, we would be exporters. I'm sorry, that is wrong. The key thing that is a challenge here is that most of the African countries have not embraced the advancements in technology. The reason South Africa has certain seed cultivars, and you can't find those seed cultivars in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, in Kenya, and many of these countries, is because the political leadership there does not want to actually open up the market for those seeds to be able to be imported by the farmers to use. I'll give you a quick example. When President Ruto came in Kenya, one of the key things that he was championing was that he wants to open up a room for genetically modified seeds so that Kenya's agricultural production can take off. Kenya can stop depending on Tanzania and South Africa and the others for maize imports. And that seemed like a possibility for a moment, until many people in Kenya took President Ruto's administration into court, and that ended up not happening. What that has done, it has kept Kenya where it was. All of that promise of agricultural productivity has actually not happened. If then we're saying young people must come in to unlock agricultural production, we will have to have legislative approach that is actually permitting for the technology to be imported, permitting for the technology to be adopted and registered so that it can drive productivity. Otherwise, if we are calling young people to come in an environment where the legislative side is actually not changed, we are calling them to come into a poverty trap.
Okay, Wandile, I'll still go back to my original question, and that is about the quality of the seed, because I know there were studies in some cases that were proven that some of the seed that we're importing was of concern, and I've asked the question of whether or not there has been improvement in terms of the quality of what we're getting. So you say we don't have products because we have not been proactive enough as African leaders and countries in being able to get our share of the market. So while some countries, you say, are not moving fast enough, what are the avenues? So if you could just answer both questions, please.
On a seed side, we don't see a quality aspect there. Take South Africa, for example. We use a whole range of seeds here, and there are no quality aspects to the best of our understanding and following this sector. We started use these cultivars that we are using from year 2000 and 2001. And if you look at our yield perspective as well as the quality aspect of what we are producing, which is why we are able to participate in the EU market, we participate in various markets in Asia and all of that, it speaks to the quality of the products that we are able to produce. That's the one aspect in there. The key aspect that many political leaders in the continent have raised, and I think they are right on that, is the aspect of the ownership of the seeds, where they say, look, if we are allowing some of these cultivars to come in, they are owned by certain multinationals. And I do think that that's a conversation that can be had between those multinationals as well as the seed breeders in certain countries. But blocking in the technology from actually entering some of the countries is actually what has led to the low productivity that we are seeing now in the continent. The improvement in agricultural output that we have seen in many of the countries over time has actually been through tilling more area, cutting off more trees, rather than the improvement in yields that we get per hectare that we plant.
And talking about product and yields, I understand that some of what we offer as Africa is of lesser value when processed. So speak to me about when you say we don't have product, does it have to be something that is, for lack of a better word, cosmetically or, engineered? Or can we use the products that we already have? Is it just consumables? Or can we look at products like shea? I believe that's also a great example of the promises of what we can export.
No, I mean, look, we can export a whole range of products. I mean, again, I'll make an example of my own country, both you and I, South Africa. The products that we export is not just grains. I mean, we largely export actually fruits and wine and meat. We export about 36 agricultural commodities, and some slightly processed wine and the others fruit juices and stuff. Others are not processed. But the key thing, which is the point I was making about the continent, is that take, for example, now we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. In a few years to come, there will always be complaints that there are certain winners and losers. And the losers will come mainly because they don't have the sufficient volume to take advantage of the markets that have been open. Those that have a sufficient volume to take advantage, they will gain unfair dominance over the other countries, which is why then opening up markets, which is an important stuff, but it has to be done hand in hand with improving agricultural productivity. Otherwise, it will not be in sync in the policy approach of how we are thinking about. And I actually like the fact that agriculture is topical because we are thinking about it now, not only just for household welfare, but as an engine for economic growth and job creation. But then, which is then takes me back to my central point of saying we must use all of the advancements on mechanical side and biological side so that we take advantage then of improving our productivity. When we are able to produce volume and produce it in an affordable price, and then we can be able to offer the world market a cheaper product, then at that time where we will really be able to boldly say we can feed the world, and we are offering this quality at this affordable price.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but I hope we will get a chance to at some point speak about the presence of red tape, harnessing technology, and also just speaking about market intelligence, what factors need to be considered there. Speaking there to Chief Economist at the Agriculture Business Chamber of South Africa, Agbiz, Wandile Sihlobo, brings the time to 28 minutes past 9.
At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tshepiso Makwetla.
Channel Africa. And we mentioned earlier on that we will be looking at the state of upcoming elections in Malawi. The United Nations Development Programme there saying a team of its roving observers are being trained to monitor polling day procedures, security and rapid reporting ahead of the country's elections. That's in just over a week. This comes as the Malawian Electoral Commission announced that it is advancing its preparations for the general elections, which are set for September 16th. Citizens will elect a president, members of parliament, councillors of their choice, and the Malawi Electoral Commission says ballot papers have begun coming into the country in several consignments. For more, we're joined now by a spokesperson of the MEC, Malawian Electoral Commission, Sangweni Mwafirwa. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much. My pleasure to be here.
At what point are we in terms of preparations beyond the delivery of ballot papers, logistically, the Electoral Commission staffing, the resources that are needed? Does it seem like everything is on even keel and you are prepared as the MEC?
Well, I can say that we are at an advanced stage. We are looking at a critical path, and nothing standing on a critical path can say or can give us any element of doubt that we may fail to deliver an election on the 16th. So as we speak today, we have started receiving the ballot papers, which we are printing in Dubai. We received the first consignment yesterday, and then we will continue receiving them on the 4th, the 5th, and by 6th we should be done. We are keeping them at safe place, expecting that we are going to start dispatching them on the 9th. And on our schedule is that by the 14th, all the 15,148 polling stations should have received all their polling equipment and the materials. We have almost everything that we needed in stock, and then also regarding staff, we have advanced. We have recruited all the polling staff that we need. What we are doing now is the cascaded training, whereby we train the master trainers who have gone now to the councils to train the presiding officers. From there, the presiding officers will train their polling staff at the polling station level now on the 15th. So far, we should speak to the world that as a nation, we are on course to to hold an election which will be a role model to other countries.
So you say the ballot papers are being kept in a safe place. Where are they being kept, and who is guarding them?
Well, we are keeping them at the airport. Our Kamuzu International Airport, that's where we are keeping them. The warehouse is under guard by the Malawi Defense Force and also the Malawi Police Service. No one is allowed access unless we are getting new stock. So what we do is that once we have offloaded and warehouse them, we seal the place with our own locks, but at the same time we put seals, and the party agents present also take the seal numbers. When we receive another consignment, what we do is we open, but we open also in the presence of party agents. We break the seals after they have verified that they're the very same seals we used last time. Then we add new stock, and then we also seal it again.
And are you sharing this information with party agents? And I ask this question because there have been concerns about what you've been accused of as lack of transparency, including access to the voters' rolls. So there does seem to be a fear of an environment that is conducive for free and fair elections. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't think they have accused us of not being transparent or access to the voters' roll. We gave them the voters' roll. They have everything. Where there was different in opinion was to issue of audit of the election management system. I guess the two technically they are different. Let me assure you that when it comes to transparency, we are a model electoral management body in SADC and beyond. Everything that we do when we are receiving ballot papers, we invite them, they come and witness. We verify the number of ballots that we have received and even the serial numbers and everything, and warehoused in their presence. Come the day that they will be dispatching to the councils and the constituencies, we're also going to invite the political parties to witness everything. When we dispatch the ballot papers from the airport, where they will terminate, whether it's the constituents or the council, party agents will also be there to verify that this truck that has arrived, it's the very same truck carrying the same consignment that was dispatched from the airport.
Are you saying that there has been an independent audit of the voters' roll, and Human Rights Watch is certainly accusing you of a lack of transparency over this issue?
Well, I may not have seen that statement from the Human Rights Watch. If they did that, they could have done us justice by sharing with that. And the second to that, it would have been better for them to appreciate the context in which the Commission said we could not proceed with the audit as it was being presented from the political parties. For one thing, I think EMB will grant you an access to their software and give you even the source code. I think that was not within the security framework. As an EMB, we got a responsibility. As much we would be transparent, we could, but we also have the responsibility to preserve the integrity of the electoral management service. So we also need to have a system that is secure, that not everyone can penetrate.
So,
whether we have given them the access.
Mr. Mafura, are you saying, you are saying, and I want to make sure that I understand you correctly, so you're saying there is a context and the parties should understand why you could not have an independent audit of the voters' roll, and you're saying it's because you can't secure that. I'm just trying to understand, is this what you're saying, and why would you lack the ability?
I really want to put the matters of the voters' roll into context. The issue that came forward was not like the audit of the voters' roll. They wanted to go into the system, the election management system. When it's an issue of the voters' roll, we have been moving with them. Let me tell you that from the start of voter registration, the party agents were at each and every polling registration center. They were given the voter registration statistics for each day, and even at the end of the phase of the voter registration they had, when we issued the preliminary voters register figures we gave them, at the end of it, we took the entire voters roll, 7.2 million voters, with the pictures and everything to do the voters roll, including the multiple registrants, everything we gave them to say, can you go through this voters roll? Tell us if there's anything that you would see as an anomaly. From that day up to day, nobody has come up to say, we suspect that there's a minor, that there's somebody who's appearing twice. Nobody has come to complain about an issue of the voters' roll. Maybe the issue that we should be discussing was the access to the election management software or into our database and system, whereby the Commission said the demands that you are putting forward cannot be granted for now because of security concern. If you ask any IT experts, the moment you give somebody a source code to your software, it means you are compromising that software. Immediately after that, the thing becomes unusable because it's not vulnerable. So if we give one party an access to the software, what will happen to the others? The others will also not have trust in the very same system. So as an EMB, we got the responsibility to sustain and preserve the integrity of the system and the entire process.
What is the role of the AU's technical assistance mission? So you are saying, are you suggesting that you would need to give a code to every individual party? Why is there not a central system that allows it to be accessible in the presence of MEC authorities and all other legal authorities or electoral assistance authorities that need to be there, including observers, because that is also the role of observers, is it not?
Well, I may not have gotten maybe your question right, but let me contextualize that what the parties had asked about. I would have wished if it had gone into the request, because the request, the way it's presented outside, it's not what is in the audit scope which they had put. So the commission had to say we cannot proceed with this. Any other information that you want, we give, and we have been providing to that. That matter, further to that, I think has been litigated. So we would wait to see the outcome of the court.
So it is a source of litigation.
Yes, it's a matter that has been litigated. Suffice to say that the only thing that the commission would want to keep as a secret is anything that preserves the integrity of the process. We are a transparent EMB so far.
Okay, so what about the landscape, the political landscapes? We've seen attacks that occurred in June, what has been made as allegations of intimidation by so-called militia, which has been, obviously it's an allegation, accused to be connected to some political parties. Does the Malawi Electoral Commission see that as a source of concern, particularly in creating an environment that beyond the lethargy, lack of interest in voting, that will see people feeling safe enough to go and vote?
Well, we have been observing the environment since campaign started on the 14th of July. If we look to the past and where we're coming from, we should commend the people that they have been generally peaceful. We have some 1 or 2 cases whereby it has been reported of pulling each other's campaign material, 1 or 2 cases of intimidation, but I'll tell you that when you look and compare that qualitatively from where coming from, the situation in Malawi has been generally peaceful, and we are looking forward that people will be interested in coming up to vote on the 16th. We're in an environment where they will not have fear or be intimidated by anyone. The cases that have been reported have been bordering on hard criminal elements. So what the commission did was to refer the matter to the Malawi Police Service for a thorough investigation, and we are looking forward to receiving the same. One thing people should always put into context is that though we are in an election period, there are still statutory bodies, legal constitutional bodies that have got various mandates, and their mandates do not become suspended just because it's an election period. So when you look at us as an EMB, we don't have the capacity to investigate criminal elements and prosecute somebody. So when such a thing is committed, we expect the police to move in and exercise their mandate. The same goes into issues of whether it's corruption, whether it's money laundering, whether it's giving out of handouts. The respective institutions, they should also be moving in very fast.
Have you received any complaints from any of the political parties? You yourself say, as the MEC, you've noticed, as you call it, minor incidents, just 1 or 2, but have you received any formal complaints from political parties? And I know some have raised what they consider, because you yourself raised the issue of corruption, what they see as the ineffectiveness of Malawi's Political Parties Act, accusations saying that the ruling party is allegedly exploiting state resources for its campaigns.
Okay, let me put it on record that I didn't raise an issue of corruption, but I used corruption as an example to say, should corruption occur during elections, the mandate of the Anti-Corruption Bureau doesn't become suspended just because it's a case that is happening during election. We would want them to still probe that. So coming to your education, I would say, yes, we have received 1 or 2 cases. I may not have the exact figures, but the cases that we received needed or required that the police should investigate them. So we did refer the matters to the police.
All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Malawian Electoral Commission spokesperson Sangwani Mwafuriwa speaking to us about, let me say that again, Mwafuriwa. Apologies for mispronouncing that, for telling us what the latest is with regard to election preparation for Malawi.
You're welcome.
The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
Right, so let's just go back to some of the developments. I mentioned it earlier on, ongoings with regards to the presidency and the judiciary in Ghana. President John Dramani Mahama has removed the West African nation's Chief Justice effective immediately. The president's decision was reportedly based on a report by a committee that found grounds of misbehavior and recommended that Gertrude Torkorno's removal from office. President Mahama launched an investigation into her, Ghana's third female Chief Justice, earlier this year and then suspended her. Torkorno has rejected the allegations of misconduct, saying they are unfounded and politically driven. For more on this, Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu spoke to Dr. Kwame Asante, Senior Lecturer for the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana.
Given what we heard in the media space, I realized that it was imminent. Yes, it was just a matter of time. So as they went through the process of the in-camera hearing, I was not surprised yesterday that they handed down that decision and the president acted on it by removing the Chief Justice.
Does she have any grounds to appeal the dismissal?
I must be honest, I have not checked whether he has that, option. But I want to assume that once it's a legal process, obviously, if you are dissatisfied, you should be given opportunity to, as it were, go to court and seek the redress. But I'm a layman and I've not checked. So this one, I cannot put substance on that.
What exactly is she accused of?
Has not come out clearly on the grounds for that. So any other thing would be, would dovetail into the realm of, rumor. And you and I, we are not interested in that. So unless they publish those grounds, we may not be able to state the grounds. Remember, the whole exercise of the process took place in camera. So the government statements that we have read so far are true, that she was removed on stated grounds of misbehavior. But the charges that were leveled against her, for which reason she was not able to respond appropriately, and for that matter, that has led to her removal, we don't have it. But there are snipers of information within the media space and all that, but which you and I cannot place a finger on.
And how will you describe her tenure, as short as it was?
From where I sit, I saw her tenure that he was discharging her duties according to the dictates of her office. And we didn't get much in terms of any breach that she has committed until this whole issue came up.
Will this dismissal in any way undermine the country's judiciary?
There are people who believe that this is going to undermine first the executive, because to them they see the executive, hand in here, and it's far-reaching, and it has consequences for justice system in the country. And then they also expand the conversation to include the fact that it is going to undermine the country's democratic credentials. I'll start with the judiciary. I don't see any effort on the part of this whole exercise in undermining the judicial independence of this country. Our country's judiciary is independence, and that the beauty of it is what we are experiencing. This is a Chief Justice. Before becoming a Chief Justice, was a lawyer, an astute lawyer, a reason to become a Chief Justice, and then he later was appointed as a Chief Justice. You realize that he has seen it all and all that. So if there is something, a decision which is taken and it's affecting a right or any process, she knows what to do. And that is why he filed a number of petitions at the Supreme Court, and she lost all of them. She even went to the ECOWAS Parliament to seek redress on the issues, and there she was not successful. That tells you that the courts are working and working independently. Back to the democratic process. Democracy, you and I know, hinges on rule of law. It doesn't mean that if you are heading any institution or you are any human being within the state and you take a decision contrary to the laws of the land, you are going to be spared. No, that is not democracy. It's something else. But the real democracy is where decisions are taken based on law and reflect the rules of the game. So anybody who operates within the democratic space, you are limited by any law that exists to regulate your conduct.
And that day, Dr. Kwame Ansah Asante, Senior Lecturer for the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana.
Tshepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
10 minutes to 10. Let's wrap up the program now. We talk about South Africa's tourism minister, Patricia de Lille. She's been accused of falsehood and political interference after dissolving the board of SA Tourism unlawfully, they say. De Lille initially claimed to have fired the board because it was an unlawful meeting in Parliament on Tuesday. She says her decision was based on a resolution by the board to appoint a representative after an abrupt resignation of the board chairperson. De Lille is accused of firing the board to protect the chief executive, who was put on suspension for being incompetent. Dimakazo Leshoro reports.
There is no crisis. Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille has twice dissolved the South African Tourism Board, first in 2023 after the $56 million Tottenham Hotspur sponsorship scandal, and again last month. In both cases, she cited governance failures and unlawful actions, saying the boards had lost credibility and ignored proper processes. But critics say the boards were trying to enforce consequence management over financial irregularities and a disputed CEO appointment. Former members of the two boards, together with the minister, were summoned to Parliament on Tuesday. The board stated that they were carrying out their fiduciary duties, and this, they say, is at the heart of their dismissal. Ikaneng Pilani, one of the dismissed board members, explains.
So, minister cannot be selective in how she applies the law. Where it suits her, she says we must follow the law. When it doesn't suit her, she doesn't respond to our correspondence. Lastly, Chair, these members, you can accuse them of anything, but you cannot accuse them of incompetence. These are members, strong men and women that build companies from scratch, successful companies in this country. You cannot accuse them about incompetence. The minister wants to run SAT. She communicates to the CEO, and that's what she is doing.
Another former board member, Judy Nokwedi, echoed the same sentiments.
We are sticklers for due process. We serve on listed company boards, international company boards. We cannot have our status as non-executive directors tarnished by being labelled unlawful nor delinquent, and certainly not for some of us. We're in the winter of our years, and we have worked tirelessly in the interest of South Africa and Africa, not at this stage of our lives and our careers to be labelled delinquent, unlawful, irresponsible. That is defamatory and libelous.
The ex-chairperson and deputy accused the minister of twisting facts about excessive meetings and board fees. They say the real problem was weak management and political interference, not board failures. The former members, including advocate Lizelle Haskins, are now suing the minister for reputational damage.
The CEO was aware of multiple instances where procurement policies were not adhered to, prepayments were made, and contracts were not strictly followed. Based on these recurring issues, the board chairperson, along with the chairpersons of the committees, collectively concluded that the CEO was grossly unsuitable for the position. As noted by my former chairperson, the board concurred with the recommendation that the CEO's employment not be conferred. The board did not conclude this process because a week later, myself and my former chairperson were removed by the minister from our leadership positions. We assumed the removal to be in response to the chairperson and I leading the probation assessment and recommendation that the CEO not be affirmed as the CEO of SAT.
De Lille refuted claims that she protected the now suspended CEO, saying due process was followed in line with the Legal Advice and Tourism Act when she was appointed. She says there was no corruption in the appointment of the chief executive.
Is there any corrupt relationship between you and the CEO that you are protecting?
You know, my colleague, honorable member, I can't even spell corruption correctly because I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I don't want to smell corruption anywhere in government. And like I said in the beginning, every law matters. Every cent of government matters. And according to the oath that I have taken, I must look after the taxpayers' money. So there's absolutely no corrupt relationship with anybody in South Africa. Anybody in South Africa, no corrupt relationship. If you want to, I can open up my banking accounts to you. I can invite you to my house. The president has done lifestyle orders on all of us. It's there. But I will not tolerate anybody even insinuating that I've got a corrupt relationship with anyone in this country.
De Lille has blamed everything, including the law, for the shenanigans at SA Tourism.
Would you agree that you've put the board in a difficult situation by not either quickly appointing the chairperson and the deputy chairperson of the board?
No, I think the law put them in a difficult situation because the law prescribed in Section 18(2) what you must do when you are faced with such circumstances. Not me. Law prescribed, and they are a creature of statute, and they have to comply with the law. It's not me.
Members of Parliament urged De Lille to correct her decision to dissolve the board, which they called unlawful. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakato Leshoro in Johannesburg.
And finally, we end with some financial news. A JSE-listed grocery store ShopRite released their annual results to the market today. The 52 weeks ending June 2025 saw the company reporting sales revenue coming in at 257.2 billion rands, up 8.9% on the year before. Operating profit was recorded at 14.8 billion, up 18%, while headline earnings per share came in at 1,372 cents, up 15.8%. Shareholders are set to get a gross dividend of 7 rand 81, up 9.7% on the year before. ShopRite CEO Pieter Engelbrecht.
The most interesting thing I actually want to say is we've experienced in some levels deflation. And I like to say this, especially for consumers, that last month we had a situation that we had 13,300 items that was actually cheaper this year than last year. Now, I just want to say, so it's not true that prices never come down. They do come down. We are in a very, very low inflation environment for a retailer. The benefit we have is that we've been able to grow volume at about 4.8% and grow customers by almost 4.5%. In total, we increased our customer visits for the year by over 200 million. And I think that is, a retailer cannot ask for more, is that customers elect, because we all know they've got choices, that customers elect to come to us. And through all of this, and I have to say that we've also mentioned at our previous discussion that it's a multi-year or a result of a multi-year investment in technology, in tools to help us to manage pricing, we call it the price optimization tool, our personalization, and in specific, then our extra savings program, where we now have 34 million customers that has or is a member of the extra savings program. And if you call that as a percentage of the adult population in South Africa, that's over 75%. So with that, we have such good data to make data-driven, better decisions. And in the end, that is what helps us to be able to manage our gross margins so much better.
And that's how we come to the end of Africa World Hour this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing and listening here on Channel Africa. Up next, Shayla Ndikumana with African Diaries.
When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole?